Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Talk Freelance to Me podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Cisneros Mejia, and today you are in for a treat because you get not just one Ashley, you get two Ashleys. I'm so happy to welcome Ashley Feller to the podcast. Hi, Ashley. How are you today?
Hey, Ashley, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. We're Ashley squared.
We are. And I'm so excited that you're here. So Ashley and Ashley, she's a podcaster and a musician and a singer and a producer. And you help people like me who are starting podcasts. She has a fantastic podcast called the St. Andrew's Jezebel Podcast, which we're going to talk about. And we actually connected at PodFest. What was it, a couple of months ago? It hasn't even been that long.
It was in January.
Was it in January?
Yeah.
Gosh, this year is going by so fast. I feel like that's life now. This is, listeners, you guys know that this is a new podcast that I'm creating. And PodFest was actually my very first podcasting conference ever. And they had like a cool little app that you could connect with other folks. And I think I was just looking for other writers and I found Ashley. I'm like, wait a minute. Her name's Ashley. She writes and she's from Panama City, which is where I grew up too. I was like, man, she's already cool in my book. How was PodFest for you? You got over your fear of flying, right? I remember you wrote about it after.
Yes, that was an opportunity for me to get over my fear of flying. And I met you, and that was so cool how we had tried to hitch up a couple times that weekend. And then finally, it was like, I'm right around the corner, and you were right there.
It was so awesome. And you were so sweet. It's funny, like I meet, different people, and I don't know if it's a Southern thing or what, but I'm all about like reaching out to people and getting to know them, and I'm curious about them. And some people are not comfortable with that. Like my two best friends, New Yorkers originally. And sometimes they tease me because, I'm like, I'll sit right next to you. I'll reach out. I'm like, hey, how are you? So it's awesome that you were open to talking with me. And I love your podcast. I love that you're here. Guys, Ashley has so much expert knowledge about podcasting, about storytelling, about creativity in different ways. I'm going to read a little bit from Ashley's bio so you can learn more about her. So Ashley Feller's story is one of resilience, creativity, and passion. Born and raised on the Florida Panhandle, Ashley has been a professional musician for over 2 decades. She's a singer, songwriter, podcast producer, freelance writer, content creator, and owner of ADF Media. Like many people in 2020, her world was turned upside down by the COVID-19 pandemic. Ashley had been on tour when the world shut down, and she was forced to return home. It was a challenging time, but she refused to let the pandemic silence her. Instead, she used it as an opportunity to take action and create a geolocal podcast that would help local artists, musicians, and business owners feel seen and appreciated during dark times and through this reconstruction period. Ashley dedicated to start the St. Andrew's Jezebel Podcast, which was named after an original song inspired by her hometown, St. Andrews, Florida. The podcast focuses on the cultural renaissance that's happening in St. Andrews following the devastation of Hurricane Michael in 2018. Ashley has poured her heart and soul into this project, interviewing over 100 locals and producing it for over 2 years. It has been a labor of love, but it wasn't just a passion project. Ashley knew that she had the skills and the expertise to help other creative people who wanted to start podcasts and hone their strategy. And so she turned her newfound expertise into a business that serves other creatives. As a native Floridian, Ashley is an advocate for the arts and keeping Florida unique. She's also a mentor for aspiring musicians, assisting them with press release writing, EPK structuring, and tour planning. In addition to her work as a musician and podcast producer, Ashley is also a talented freelance writer and a content creator. She's written about music for the Jam Witch, drawing on her years of experience in the industry to provide insightful commentary and analysis. And through her company, ADF Media, she offers a range of services to help creative people really achieve their goals. Ashley's story is one of resilience and creativity. She refused to let this hurricane and a global pandemic silence her and instead used it as an opportunity. Ashley, thank you so much for being here. Talk about an inspiring bio. My goodness.
Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. So we've got to start with the podcast. I love your podcast. I was listening to a couple episodes earlier in the weeks leading up to our interview. So what inspired you to start the St. Andrews Jezebel Podcast, and how has it impacted your career as a musician and a podcast producer?
So looking back, I think I wanted a podcast for years. And like many people, I always said, I don't have time right now. I don't have time. I'm mobile. I'm living in a truck. I'm living part-time in an RV. I'm living in tents. How am I going to have a podcast when I'm living this way? So I happened to be on tour with my best friend, Lynn, in her RV in Central Florida. We were in Lakeland, and this was right at the beginning. This was March 18th, 2020. And we were on our way to the next destination, and I started getting emails from the festival that I was supposed to be covering that the festival had been canceled. So, of course, that sent me home. And with all that time at home, I no longer had the excuse of, I don't have time. I had a friend who had donated some recording equipment to me. And I said, well, I want to use this, but how? And then I remembered, I want to have a podcast. And I was thinking, I want to showcase the local people of Panama City, St. Andrews area, because in 2018, we went through the devastation of Hurricane Michael. And with standard media coverage, they talk about it for a few days and then they move on to the next. That's the way it is. But that did a lot to our hearts. We felt like we weren't seen when that happened. And when that happened, pretty much everyone I knew lost their home, their job, their whole life had been turned upside down. And then it happened again during COVID, but in a different way. So I wanted to start the St. Andrews Jezebel podcast as a way to document our rebuilding and to highlight the amazing people that are rebuilding Panama City, Bay County, the whole Panhandle area.
That is so inspiring. Talk about taking an opportunity, finding the silver lining, and seeing this pause that it forced all of us to kind of stop, right? And reevaluate and think about our goals. That's so cool. So you've interviewed a ton of people, like over 100 locals. Tell me about the insights that you've gained into the cultural renaissance that's happening in St. Andrews.
That it is just building more and more and more and more. I think that Panama City has gone through cycles of having an art scene. I think growing up there in the early 90s, having a parent who's a creative, my father was a musician, I was able to see the music scene back then. And then through the recession, as in a lot of places, it just sort of tapered down because, of the recession in and of itself. And we kind of went through a dry spell where there weren't so many creative events and activities and people were just getting by. But eventually we came back after the hurricane and the locals all said to themselves, we've got a blank slate. Let's beautify our town. Let's rebuild. And the insight that I've gained is that there is a creative energy burning in Bay County and people are just setting the town on fire with what they can do.
That is so cool. I absolutely love that. And how cool are you to be documenting that process? People who might come there, might move there for different reasons. They'll be able to look at your podcast almost like an archive of this renaissance, of this rebirth. That's super cool. So now that you've created this amazing podcast yourself, you've actually turned your expertise into a podcast production company and to a business that serves other people. Can you tell me about these services that you offer through ADF Media?
Yes. So ADF Media has not officially launched yet. I'm just now getting all the branding things together, getting everything ready for the website, but I still am doing work under that name. There's just no official presence out there yet. But the services that I'll be offering are copywriting services editing services, podcast production, podcast launches. I can create electronic press kits for people if they need them. I can write press releases, pretty much any kind of content writing you may need. And I'd also like to put together a small team eventually of local creatives here in Bay County, because in the winter, it can be kind of hard. And, everybody's got wonderful skills, and someone might discover that there might be a lot more to them than music or whatever it is their main focus is, and come work with me and, help other people with their creative projects as well.
That's awesome. I really love that. Love that you're already thinking about ways to create these other opportunities for people, not just your clients who are going to benefit, but other people like with jobs. That's incredible. And so you're also a mentor for other musicians, especially the younger ones. What advice do you have for those who are looking to break into this industry and really make a name for themselves?
Take the time to practice as much as you can. And that doesn't just include your instrument or your songwriting. Take the time to practice your stage presence and how you present when you go to live events, and have a clear definition as to who you are when you start. And it's really good to always have an electronic press kit, because it's essentially your super business card. If you're out there and you want to play festivals, you want to play songwriter showcases, you want to just get some local gigs, it's really impressive if you have that electronic press kit.
Very good advice. I love that. Super, super cool. So how has your experience as a freelance writer and a content creator also influenced your work as a musician and a podcast producer, and even the other way, vice versa?
Oh my goodness. It's hard to draw the lines because it feels like it's all married to each other, because I really did not know at the time. I thought, oh, the technical things, some of those things will carry over from music, but no, it's so many things when it comes to just work ethic and public relations and connecting with people. It's all a similar process, and I just love it. And since I've been doing podcasting, that's actually led me to get more gigs. I didn't see that coming. I've had local business owners in St. Andrews say, hey, we love your podcast. Would you come play at our new cafe for Halloween? And I got to play at this place. It's called Luna Muna. And they had their stage open for the very first time on Halloween. And I got to play on this really high platform overlooking Beck Avenue, where the witches have their annual ride for pancreatic cancer. And I just got the best seat in the house. And it was so cool because of both creative outlets.
Very cool. Love that. What a testimonial. What an example to show how putting yourself out there can really lead to new opportunities. So can you tell us more about your advocacy for the arts in Florida, and what initiatives are you involved in that support the creative community?
I think it's very important that we embrace that Florida has a very unique culture in and of itself. We really do. Florida's been around a long time, and we're a big mixture of all kinds of people. And all those people are wonderful and have great stories and art that needs to be shared. So a big initiative that I've found myself drawn to in the last few years is the Friends of Florida Folk, and festivals that are within the universe of the Florida Folk Festival. There's the Will McLean Festival, there's Barberville, there's the Old Time Convention down in Central Florida, and they're all made up of people who are passionate about Florida culture, Florida roots, Florida environmental issues. And it's just an honor to be sharing my original music and, just things that I've learned how to do. I taught a marketing workshop festival I went to a few weeks ago. It's been great to connect with the folks in that hemisphere as well.
Awesome. 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 So you've done a lot. I'm sure you've learned a lot. Can you talk about the challenges that you face as a musician and a podcast producer, and then how you've overcome them?
I would say some of the challenges have been letting myself get in the way. I would say that I'm guilty of telling myself the worst lies, about myself. Like, people throw around that word imposter syndrome all the time, and it's very real. And that's something that I continue to contend with. And the way that I try to get through it is I write down what I'm grateful for every day, because that's a reflection of how much I'm blessed and the hard work that I've been doing. And I also write down my wins. I write down my wins every end of the week. And when I'm feeling kind of blue, I look back at them and I say, look at how much you've won throughout your life. And especially since the two major disasters being the hurricane and COVID.
That is super inspiring, Ashley. I love that. I think being a creative oftentimes requires bravery and courage, because it's vulnerable to create something and put it out into the world and just kind of wince and kind of, you hope that people will receive it well and receive it even the way you intended it. And then we do that over and over. So every song you're doing, every performance, every interview, everything that you're creating is just more vulnerability. It's more every time. So that's really great advice. I love the idea of writing down our wins to revisit them. So how do you approach your process of creating content for your podcast and other projects? And what strategies do you use to stay inspired and motivated?
So my process with producing my own podcast has evolved over time, as that's often the journey of any podcaster. I wouldn't say there's too many who do it exactly the same as when they started. And I started out with a bunch of solo episodes, and that eventually progressed to invite my first guest, and then I was hooked. And then I went through a season where I recorded at the local library because they have a podcast studio. And then I went to Podfest, and I was very inspired by Mike Hamm, who has Greetings from the Garden State, which is a local podcast about New Jersey. And the thing that is so unique about his is he does all his interviews on location. So I was inspired to begin this last season by recording all my interviews with the locals on location throughout St. Andrews. So the typical process is I'll take about a 3-week period and I'll record everybody, all 10 interviews for the season. And then I'll use the remaining week or so that's left to do all the marketing material. That way, everything is done, or mostly everything is done before the season actually starts. And then when the season actually starts, that's when I can say to the community, hey, have you heard the episode? Let's have a talk about it. Meet me at Uncle Ernie's, meet me at this local establishment, and let's talk about what we love about St. Andrews and use those episodes that were published as a preface point. And that's my process now.
Wow. That is super inspiring, especially for someone like me who's, I'm just starting this project. And so to see kind of where you've gone and how you've taken it and really maximizing the mileage from these interviews and creating follow-up discussions to see how people react. And I'm sure you come up with cool ideas from what people take away once they've listened. That's super cool. I love that.
Yes. And there's a lot to be said about looking at your analytics. You can go in on the back end of Apple and see exactly where folks are dropping off. And then you can kind of just analyze, is there a trend here? And then make an adjustment to whatever you're doing to improve things.
Very cool. Such good advice. So good. Can you share any insights or lessons that you've learned from your years of experience in music and how these insights have shaped your career path today?
It kind of all goes back to don't let yourself get in the way again, because there are many times it doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether I'm writing or podcasting or playing music. Sometimes I'll tell myself, you're not what this bio says you are. And I have to, again, remind myself of my wins and my gratitude to get through it. But another challenge is avoid comparing yourself to other people. Trust in your own process and that you're on the right path and that you're blessing the world with whatever it is you have to give the world. And that's what they're doing too. And respect what they're doing and have respect for what you're doing, and you'll be just fine.
That's so good. It's so good. I mean, and I think experiences like PodFest are really inspiring. You can also get into that comparison. You can get into feeling like, oh my goodness, I thought I had some ideas, but wow, look what this person has done or what they're doing. But, we weren't there during their early days to see what the path looked like at the beginning. So I love that idea of respect, of mutual respect, of treating ourselves with respect. We need that. We need those reminders, I think, daily to respect ourselves and to be kind to ourselves. That's great. So what's next for you in ADF Media? Can you talk about projects or initiatives that you're really excited about in the coming months and even years?
I am excited just to start. I just got the papers a few weeks ago that it's registered. I could go ahead and really get the ball rolling. So right now, I'm just really happy with making an intentional plan of how I want this business to go and who I want to serve, which is namely underserved creative people. That's mainly whom I want to help and whom I would like to bring on board with me when the time is right to take it even further, to amplify those messages of, folks who are underserved and need some help to get their message out there.
I love that, Ashley. That's so cool. We need all of it. When you're talking about these really challenging times like Hurricane Michael, like the pandemic, a lot of times we think about the first responders and medical folks. And yes, we need to give them their flowers and be grateful to them. And we also need creatives. We need people like you to document those stories, to express those emotions through music, through song, through lyrics. And so that idea of you taking these lessons that you've learned and helping other creative people who may not have an opportunity to go to PodFest or do some of the things that you've been able to do or me that I've been able to do, talk about a gift to the world, because we need creative people during hard times. That's what gets us through. Movies, Netflix series, music, that creative energy. That's the part about being human. That's what makes us different from robots and ChatGPT, is our soul. And creative people like you who are bringing people up and giving them a mic, that's really powerful. Really, really powerful.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to do it. And I'm just floored by the stories I hear every time I interview someone and inviting them back so that folks can see their evolution. I'm a fan of having returning guests like every year or so.
That's really great. I love that, to kind of see where they are now and to witness that trajectory and that progress. Very cool, Ashley. I know so many people are going to want to learn more about you. So where can folks find you online if they want to connect after hearing this?
So right now, the best place to get in touch with me would be ashley.feller@gmail.com. I have a website for my music side of things, which is ashleyfellermusic.com. And then if you'd like to check out the St. Andrews Jezebel podcast, that would be the St. Andrews Jezebel podcast.com. And I'm on Instagram as @AshleyFellerMusic, and then also at the St. Andrews Jezebel podcast. So lots of handles, but wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah, you are. That's great. Well, you should be easy to find then for folks that are listening. Ashley, thank you for being on the podcast today. I'm so excited for ADF Media and to see all of the creative projects that are going to be made possible when people are going to be able to talk to you and get benefit from everything that you've learned and everything that you've done in the creative space. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. It's such a joy to have met you and to be on your podcast now. And I'm just so proud of you and excited for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And with that, we've come to the end of another episode. Please make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already done so, and give me a 5-star review on Apple. This will help out a lot in getting the word out about this brand new podcast. I invite you to check out the show notes and also grab my free Niches Get Riches freelance writing worksheet. to brainstorm the best niches for your writing business. If you're not a writer, you can still use it to get business ideas. And until next time, this is Ashley at Talk Freelance to Me. Don't forget, we all get this one precious life. Don't constrain yourself to a box that you were never meant to fit in. It is your right to profit from your own creative gifts. This podcast was created by Ashley Cisneros Mejia. Our music was composed by Donna Rafael of World Instrumentals. Talk Freelance to Me is a product of Phoenix Creative Studio.